please subscribe and share for more story. The words came softly, almost kindly, which made them worse. You're going to die with nothing, Mom. Elaine Turner sat at the breakfast table with her hands wrapped around a porcelain teacup that had gone cold. Across from her, her daughter Marissa Cole smiled the way people smiled at toddlers who didn't understand limits, patient, indulgent, certain. Marissa didn't think she was cruel. In her mind, she was being practical. Elaine lifted her eyes slowly. There's no need to speak like that, she said evenly. Marissa didn't look up. She dumped spinach into a high-powered blender that cost more than Elaine's first car. It's not mean.
It's a fact, she said.
You're 81. No pension. No retirement account. No real savings. How do you think this ends? She pressed the button and the blender screamed, swallowing any response. Elaine offered none. When the noise stopped, Marissa poured the thick green drink into a glass Elaine had bought for a Christmas dinner no one ever thanked her for. You're lucky I let you live here, Marissa added lightly. Some people would have put you in a home by now. Something inside Elaine shifted, quietly, permanently. The comments were new. They rotated endlessly, disguised as concern.
Don't load the dishwasher like that.
Why is your TV so loud? You forgot again? Elaine had learned to shrink herself in response, smoothing her presence thinner with every correction. But this morning felt different. Elaine didn't apologize. She didn't defend herself. She didn't flinch. She sat still, posture straight, fingers steady around her teacup. Marissa stood at the sink, sunlight catching the expensive highlights in her hair, the same hair Elaine once braided before school, fingers careful and loving. Marissa wore a soft oatmeal-colored sweater and a diamond ring Elaine hadn't seen before, likely a gift from her second husband, Grant. We need to talk about your expenses, Marissa said casually. You living here without contributing, it's not sustainable. We'll have to make some hard decisions. Elaine nearly laughed. Instead, she studied her daughter's face, so familiar and yet completely foreign. She remembered paying the down payment on Marissa's first house, writing checks to keep her in graduate school, co-signing a business loan that failed, paying for 2 divorces and years of private school tuition. Now she was a burden. I understand, Elaine said quietly. Marissa nodded, already done with the conversation. Elaine's room had once been Grant's home office and, before that, storage for expensive equipment. Now it held a narrow bed, a cedar-scented dresser, and a window whose blind never fully closed. That morning, Elaine shut the door and slid the brass hook she had installed herself into place. From beneath the bed, she pulled out a worn shoebox. Inside were the pieces of a life no one knew about: 3 spiral notebooks filled with precise handwriting, 2 encrypted flash drives, a prepaid phone never used, and a laminated card from a digital bank. At the bottom lay a thick envelope sealed with tape. Elaine didn't open it.
She didn't need to.
Marissa believed her mother had nothing, and that belief had made her careless. Elaine returned the box to the darkness and opened a different notebook, brown and bent with age. She had started it 3 years earlier, believing records might protect her dignity. The first pages were hopeful: groceries, gas, small contributions. The later pages told the truth. Dental surgery, SUV down payment, tuition, divorce lawyer retainer, promised repayment, never repaid. The ledger was almost full. Elaine closed it gently. She was done recording. A knock came at the door. Mom, Marissa's voice followed, polite but sharp. Did you check the mail? I'm expecting a package. No, Elaine replied evenly. Not yet. Okay, bring it in if it comes. Marissa walked away, without waiting. Elaine sat at her desk and opened her laptop. It was hers, paid for in cash years ago. Marissa assumed it was outdated and slow. That assumption had protected Elaine well. After her husband Robert died, Elaine sold the small bookstore they had run together for decades. Everyone assumed the sale barely covered debts. They were wrong. She had placed the proceeds into a high-yield digital account and tended it quietly with patience and restraint. The balance now read $289,000. Elaine smiled faintly. At noon, she had an appointment. Marissa knew nothing about it. Elaine slipped on her walking shoes and cardigan. Just getting some air, she called out. Don't forget the mail, Marissa replied distantly. Elaine stepped outside, the door clicking shut behind her. The bus ride downtown was quiet. Elaine was invisible there, just another older woman with sensible shoes. The financial advisor's office was modest and efficient. Mrs. Turner, the man said, extending his hand. I'm Daniel Reeves. I want to protect what's mine, Elaine said plainly. And I want my daughter locked out of it completely. He nodded without surprise. Irrevocable trust, he said. Strongest option. And the beneficiary? My granddaughter, Elaine replied. Lena. Not Marissa. He didn't question it. Papers were signed, serious, permanent ones. Elaine didn't feel lighter. She felt anchored. When she returned home that evening, Marissa was cooking dinner, unusually cheerful. Where did you go? Marissa asked sharply. An appointment, Elaine replied. With who? Someone who takes me seriously. Suspicion flickered in Marissa's eyes. Elaine poured herself a glass of water, the refrigerator door between them like a shield. The balance of power had shifted. Marissa just didn't know it yet. Elaine woke before sunrise, the room still dark and quiet except for the soft hum of the city beyond the window. The boarding house was nothing like Marissa's home. No marble counters, no expensive appliances humming for attention, but it felt honest. Elaine made tea in the shared kitchen, nodding politely to another woman reading the newspaper. There were no sharp comments, no corrections. Just space. As she carried her mug back to her room, Elaine realized something unsettling. No one here needed her to disappear. Later that morning, she walked to a nearby cafe and sat by the window, watching strangers pass. For the first time in years, her thoughts weren't busy anticipating someone else's mood. Her phone buzzed. A message from Marissa. We need to talk. Elaine stared at the screen for a long moment, then set the phone face down. Talking had never protected her before. Silence used wisely could. 2 days later, Elaine met Lena at a small park near her school. Lena arrived with her backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes alert and thoughtful beyond her years. Mom's furious, she said quietly, sitting beside Elaine on the bench. Elaine nodded. She will be. Lena hesitated. I read your letter. All of it. Elaine watched a pair of sparrows hop near their feet. And Lena swallowed. I didn't know they treated you like that. I saw pieces, but not everything. Elaine reached for her granddaughter's hand. You were never supposed to carry that weight. Lena squeezed back. I want to be better, she said. I don't want to grow up thinking people exist to be used. Elaine smiled, a real one this time. Then you already are. That afternoon, Elaine visited her lawyer again to finalize smaller details, medical directives, emergency contacts, boundaries in writing. The process felt calm, almost boring, which she found deeply reassuring. Control, she realized, didn't need drama. It needed clarity. When she returned to the boarding house, a handwritten note waited on her bed. Dinner at 6 if you'd like to join us, it read. Elaine went. Around the table sat women with stories etched into their faces, divorces, losses, second chances. No one asked Elaine to explain herself. They talked about books, weather, small joys. Elaine laughed more than she expected. Later, alone in her room, she folded her new silk scarf and draped it over the chair. It wasn't about luxury. It was about choice. Marissa called that night. Elaine let it ring until the silence felt complete, then answered. What do you want? Marissa asked, skipping pleasantries. Peace, Elaine replied. Marissa scoffed. You've embarrassed us. No, Elaine said. You embarrassed yourselves by assuming I would always pay the cost of your comfort. The line went quiet. You're really not coming back? Marissa asked finally. Elaine's voice was gentle but firm. No, what am I supposed to tell people? Elaine almost laughed. The truth, she said, that your mother chose herself. She hung up before Marissa could respond. Her hands were steady. Weeks passed. Elaine settled into routines that belonged only to her. Morning walks, library afternoons, handwritten letters. The ledger stayed closed. There were no new entries. One evening, she sat by her window watching the garden darken and thought of the woman she had been, the one who believed love meant endurance. She understood now that love without respect was only erosion. Elaine didn't regret her years of giving. She regretted only the silence that followed. She lifted her teacup and smiled faintly. Her life was smaller now, but it was hers. And for the first time, that felt like abundance. The letter Elaine had written but never sent stayed folded in her drawer, not as a weapon but as proof, to herself, that she had not imagined any of it. On a quiet Tuesday morning, Marissa showed up at the boarding house without calling. Elaine recognized the sharp knock immediately. When she opened the door, Marissa stood stiffly in a tailored coat, eyes scanning the narrow hallway as if measuring worth. "This is where you live now?" she asked. Elaine nodded. "Yes." Marissa exhaled sharply. "You could come back. We can reset things." Elaine stepped aside but did not invite her in. "Resetting only works when both people are willing to change," she said.
I have.
"You haven't." Marissa's lips tightened. "You're choosing pride over family." Elaine met her gaze calmly.
No.
"I'm choosing boundaries over erasure." Marissa tried a different angle. Her voice softened. "Lena misses you." Elaine didn't rise to it. "Then let her visit," she said. "Without conditions." Silence stretched between them. "You've made everything complicated," Marissa muttered. Elaine shook her head slowly. "It was always complicated. I was just the one absorbing the cost." Marissa's shoulders sagged, frustration bleeding through. "I didn't know," she said weakly. Elaine didn't argue. Knowing had never been the issue. Seeing was. "I hope you figure things out," Elaine said, already stepping back. The door closed gently. Elaine leaned against it for a moment, breathing evenly. She felt no triumph, only relief. That weekend, Lena visited. They baked bread in the shared kitchen, flour dusting the counter and their sleeves. "Mom says you're stubborn," Lena said carefully. Elaine smiled. "She's not wrong."
Lena laughed.
"I think you're brave." Elaine paused, then nodded. "Sometimes they're the same thing." They talked about school, books, and plans Lena barely dared to voice yet. Elaine listened without redirecting, without advising unless asked. When Lena left, she hugged Elaine tightly. "I'm glad you didn't disappear," she whispered. Elaine held her a moment longer than necessary. "I won't," she promised. Autumn settled in quietly. Elaine volunteered twice a week at the local library, reshelving books and recommending novels to strangers who trusted her instinct. Her knees still ached, but her chest felt lighter. One afternoon, she received an email confirming the trust's final registration. Everything was secure. Elaine printed it, folded the paper neatly, then placed it back in the drawer beside the unopened letter. The past no longer needed defending. It had been documented. That was enough. On a clear evening, Elaine wrapped the silk scarf around her neck and walked through the garden as the last light faded. She thought of all the years she had mistaken endurance for love and silence for peace. She knew better now. Peace, she had learned, was not something granted by others. It was something you built and protected. Elaine unlocked the door to her room, stepped inside, and turned the key with quiet certainty. She was no longer waiting to be chosen. She had already chosen herself. Winter arrived without drama. Elaine watched it settle from her window, frost tracing the edges of the glass like quiet handwriting. The boarding house adapted easily. Extra blankets appeared, soup simmered more often, conversations lingered longer in shared spaces. Elaine found herself belonging without effort. One afternoon, she received a short message from Marissa. "Lena wants to come by this weekend." Elaine replied with a single word, yes. No conditions. No negotiations. When Lena arrived, she carried a book she wanted to discuss and a small container of soup she had made herself. "I'm practicing," she said shyly. Elaine tasted it and smiled. "You're doing just fine." They sat together reading, the room warm and unremarkable in the best possible way. Marissa did not come with Lena. That absence said more than any apology ever could. Elaine did not feel bitterness about it. She felt clarity. Some relationships healed slowly. Some did not. Either way, Elaine would no longer injure herself trying to force understanding where none existed. That evening, she wrote Lena a letter, not about money or inheritance, but about choosing kindness without surrendering yourself. She sealed it and placed it with the others. These were the things worth leaving behind. Months passed. Elaine's life grew quieter but fuller. She joined a small book club, learned the names of the roses outside her window, and stopped bracing herself for judgment that never came. The trust remained untouched, exactly as intended. It was not a trophy. It was a safeguard. Elaine knew she might never spend most of it, and that was fine. Security was not about indulgence. It was about rest. One morning, as Elaine stirred her tea, she caught her reflection in the mirror above the sink. The lines on her face were still there, but they no longer felt like evidence of defeat. They looked earned. She thought of the woman she had been, quiet, accommodating, endlessly patient, and felt no anger toward her. That woman had done the best she could with the tools she had. Elaine had simply learned new ones. If there was a lesson Elaine carried now, it was this: you do not have to disappear to keep the peace. You do not have to make yourself small to be loved. It is never too late to protect what is yours: your time, your dignity, your future. Elaine finished her tea, set the cup down, and opened the window just enough to let the cold air in. It felt clean.
Honest. Free.
Thanks for watching. If you value stories of respect, dignity, and justice, please subscribe. It means more than you know, and it lets me keep sharing the lessons life has carved into me.